One of my favorite things about real estate investing is the barrier of entry is so low and anybody can do it. You can wholesale if you don't have credit, or if you don't have the 2 years of income needed for this way. There's just a lot of different ways to get in the game, and I think this is just a different avenue for a lot of people that think. I have people all the time that I talk to that have a 585 credit score, 600 credit score, and they're like, I can't get into rentals. I'm going to have to wholesale until I get my credit up, and this is just another avenue for a lot of them. We got Matt Porcaro on the call. He is known as the 203K Way guy. So Matthew, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself to our audience, just kind of a little bit of background on yourself. You can take a couple minutes if you want. Just kind of explain your story up to this point, and then we're going to dig into some nitty gritty.
Yeah, man. So thanks for the intro. And I think it's really cool that you mentioned that it came up, in your journey in the beginning that like, oh, the 203K might be a good idea. And then someone probably told you it was complicated or whatever it is. And then you shied away from it and it's gone forever, right? And that's really what happens with most people, but that's why I think it's real estate's best kept secret. I went all into the niche of the 203K loan like you talked about. But I guess people call me the 203K guy now because, as you said, like nobody really talks about this, man. And the reality was back a couple of years back when I first did this thing, as crazy and tumultuous as it was, which we'll get into, it still was the best thing that ever happened to me. The one thing that catapulted me into real estate investing in a really hot market like New York, in a time when I felt like it was impossible to buy real estate and impossible to do anything.
How long did you have to live in that first one before you moved out and you're able to keep that loan, or did you refinance and move out, or what does that look like?
A great question. So in my case, what I did was I refinanced immediately. So I built 20% of equity into the deal. So on FHA and low down payment mortgages, there's something called PMI, mortgage insurance. That's basically your fee that you have to pay for being a subprime borrower. You pay a fee to FHA, to the government, for being less than ideal, and that's your little insurance payment, and that's the way that the government's able to insure all these loans. So the long and short of it is that once you hit over 20% equity on the property, you can refinance out and kind of get rid of that PMI. So one of the reasons I did it, I also got a little drop of my interest rate at the time. I think I was at like a 5.5 when I bought it, and it dropped it down to like a 5 or 4.75. So I was able to get my payment down, get the equity up, get rid of the PMI. And I did that 8 months later. So the rule of how long you need to be there is 12 months from the closing date. So my renovation took 8 months. So realistically, like I refied out immediately. It's not a flipping loan. This isn't a loan that you're meant to like repeat over and over again. Although Fannie Mae just changed, they dropped a bomb in November and completely changed the game. So now you can actually repeat it very easily now compared to what you could in the past. It's actually insane.
What does it look like now for you? It sounds like, 7-8 years ago, this helped you get into the game. It helped kind of kickstart everything, get you proof of concept for yourself, probably built a lot of confidence as well as other lendings and other sources. So what do you kind of look like now as far as, are you flipping, wholesaling, doing rentals, long-term? Give everybody kind of a feel where you're at right now on the investing side.
Yeah, so great question. So essentially what happened was I got into the flipping game, and I was doing it exclusively, and I was flipping a couple deals a year here in New York, high cost of living, high property values like 400, 500, 6,000, 100,000. So I was doing that, and I was really starting to hit stride come around March 2020, if you could remember what happened then. So I had 3 deals under contract, two officially under contract, one that was about to go. And that was March 15th of 2020. What ended up happening was I couldn't find anybody on the planet that wanted to lend to me during that week. And in retrospect, sucks because those would have been great deals. As we know what happened with the market after that, it exposed me big time. And one of the ways it exposed me was that, number one, I was depending on like foreclosures and on market stuff. So I had a blog with foreclosures with, locally with some agents, some people locally. If you remember, like foreclosures completely dried up because there was no court proceedings or anything like that. So this was during the time I was living in New York City. And ultimately I kind of just had to like regroup and figure out what the heck I was doing. During that time, the 203K way was starting to grow, right? And what was happening was a lot of people were asking me, like it all started really on BiggerPockets and like online forums and Facebook groups and stuff. And people would ask about the 203K over and over again. And like, I would just notice that all the wrong information was being put out there. And it was nonstop. I was able to go out there as I was doing this business. I was helping friends, I was helping family do these loans and helping it for them because they were all asking me, they're like, how did you do this? Like, we've never heard of this. How'd you buy a house for so little down? How'd you fully renovate? Like, we don't even know this exists. So that kind of pivoted me. And I was living in New York City during the pandemic, and we weren't allowed to do anything. New York City was a hellhole during that time. So we couldn't go out, couldn't leave anything. So I just started creating content on how to do 203K loans successfully.
What markets are good for appreciation and cash flow and all that? And we're a little unfamiliar with the New York market, but tell us about what a typical New York rental looks like, the ability to cash flow in those maybe higher dollar market areas?
It's a good question, man. Like at the end of the day, the BRRRR strategy holds true. Like you're not going to get anything turnkey that's gonna work. So with what I did is the properties I do have, I got them at deep discounts, and that was the only way that they're able to work. Now the thing is it's high cost of living, high taxes. The taxes here, the property taxes here are the killer. On my one rental I have, it's $15,000 or $16,000 a year. On my own home, it's about like $17,000 a year. So I mean, for most people across the country, that's like more than their mortgages a year, and you're doing this for just that. So basically, it's going deep with that. The takeaway with being in these high cost of living areas is that although the costs are high, rents are also very high. And the other thing, so one of the things I ran into, so I'm a control freak, right? So one of the things that was preventing me, I should have started buying out of state way earlier. Again, in retrospect, things that I'm learning now, I should have went very early, but my whole thing was that I knew construction and I wanted to be around to manage the projects and understand everything, right?
What are some of the more common mistakes people make with the 203K way? And also, but you talked a little bit earlier about checks and balances and kind of like with the government, and you have certain things to get the money, and it kind of, the system I think kind of helps a little bit so you don't go too wonky. But like you said, there's a path probably of the least resistance that you help people with. So kind of common mistakes, and does method in itself kind of help avoid huge mistakes?
Everything starts with the bank. Everything starts with the lender. And the reality is like 99% of lenders just don't do them. You have to think about it. I understand why lenders and real estate agents don't want to do them, because they look at it and to them it's more, and even though it's better for the buyer, it might be the better situation for the buyer. At the end of the day, these are commission-based people that want to get their commission. So if there's anything that's in the way of them getting that, they're going to obviously steer you away from it. Now, obviously there's lenders out there that specialize in this. I've been able to connect with many of them over the years. I always make the analogy, if you drive a Porsche and you have to get your oil changed and your tires rotated, do you bring your Porsche to a Honda dealer? No. Like, could the Honda mechanic figure it out? Probably. Would it be ugly? Probably. And that's what happens with these loans. What happens is you basically get one of three things happen. A lender will either tell you, don't do them, they're horrible. And that's really just, they never did it right. So that's like, you guys are going golfing, right? So that's like you going golfing and having a terrible round and saying the game of golf sucks. So the idea here is like, just because you don't get it right or don't understand it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the product or the game itself.
How are you teaching your students on the appropriate way to scale if they want to build a portfolio? Is it more along the lines of how you did it, just get in the game, build equity on the first one, and then kind of go out on the hard money side? Or are you teaching them to do these over and over and over again?
Yeah, so I mean, at the core of all of this is value add investing. So we're using the bank's money to renovate the house and force appreciation. And then with that appreciation, it opens up a lot of doors. So with the people in my community, I'm just telling them that a deal's a deal's a deal. We want to find something that's distressed. We want to get into it. The more messed up, the better. Common question is, what level of distress can it be in? Like literally, there just needs to be some existing residential structure of some kind. There just has to be something there. You can't use it to build on land, but there has to be something there. It could be falling down. It could be just a foundation, or it could be a nice house. I mean, the reality is like you could still use this just to like buy it and renovate your kitchens and baths and live happily ever after. Like there's no range. Obviously, what I preach is like, look for the distress. I'd say that like people that are using these, we're able to fish in like the Goldilocks zone of the market. We're not playing with retail. We're not playing with like move-in ready, high competition houses. And we're not playing down like where the wholesalers and the flippers are that need like super deep discounts. You're only putting 3.5% down. You're using the lowest available interest rate because you're using homeowner occupant interest rates, which is going to be the lowest you can get. So you're kind of playing on 90% of the people that I work with are getting their deals on MLS. They're just getting the deals that are like the foreclosures, the as-is sales and stuff like that are priced too high for investors and flippers, are stuff that the retail market isn't even touching. So again, if you build 10-15% equity on the deal, you're still quadrupling, quintupling your money. Essentially what happens is I've helped so many people with this over the years, and what I found really fascinating about it is, to your point of like, I just kind of show them the way. What it is it's investing, BRRRR strategy, flipping, deal finding with training wheels on.
What is one thing on your bucket list that you want to accomplish this year?
That's a great question. Right now, our whole focus is renovating our own home. So I'm practicing what I preach. We bought our own house, fully renovating it. So like accomplishing getting that done. What's wild about my journey is that up until just now, every house I've ever bought and sold was never going to be my own. Right. Besides that first one that I did, I was always flipping. I was always doing deals, but never for my own primary residence. I basically flipped and did real estate, invested my way into finally getting our forever home, which is exactly what we wanted. And it was really cool because we found it off market and combined it with this, and we're building $400,000 or $500,000 in equity on this thing. It's amazing. But most importantly, it's going to be our forever home, and we're building basically the home of our dreams using government financing. So it's getting that done and finally finally having our forever home. I got 2 young kids, and just it's like we're ready to settle down and like have our own place that we can call our own for hopefully a very long time.
Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Make sure to hit that like button, comment with something you learned, and make sure to subscribe to this channel. We give away more free advice on how to create wealth based on things we actually do every single day than any other channel on YouTube. Make sure to share this with a friend because our mission is to inspire you to think differently about freedom.